Israel says its forces have encircled Gaza City. Prime Minister Netanyahu has rallied his troops, telling them nothing will stop their advance, and he repeated his warning to people to leave the area. World leaders are stepping up diplomatic efforts to ease the siege of Gaza to allow more aid to reach civilians. The United Nations says 4 of its schools being used as emergency shelters have been damaged by the latest Israeli airstrikes, with at least 24 people killed. DW special correspondent Aya Ibrahim is in Jerusalem, and I asked her for an update on Israel's offensive in Gaza.
Well, it's just important to remind our viewers, Nicole, that we, the international press, are not allowed inside the Gaza Strip at the moment. So any information that we have is information that we have from the IDF or other sources. And what they have told us so far is that Israeli soldiers have now encircled Gaza City. That's really the heart of the Gaza Strip. It's in the northern part of the Strip, the part that Israeli forces have been asking civilians to evacuate from to the south, but we do know that not everyone has evacuated. Either they are unwilling or unable. But Israeli forces say they believe that that northern part in Gaza City and around Gaza City is where a large concentration of Hamas fighters are to be found. We know also that 18 Israeli soldiers have been killed in the fighting since the beginning of the ground invasion, so at least 18 soldiers, in addition, of course, to others who have been killed since this war began. We also know from the Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza that a UN-run school near the Jabalia refugee camp, that has recently been struck. We know that a school around that camp has been struck as well, and at least 27 people have been killed. That's, again, according to the health ministry in Gaza, and the Strip is run by Hamas. And so it is changing every minute, but that is the info that we have from both sides so far.
Yeah. And Aya, there are reports again today of rising violence in the occupied West Bank, with 3 Palestinians and 1 Israeli killed throughout the day. Let's take a look at the situation there and then get back to you.
Rescuers rushed to the scene after an Israeli reservist was shot dead on his way back to his settlement home. For Palestinians living close by, the consequences were swift and familiar. Israeli settlers stormed their village, setting buildings ablaze. It's just the latest outbreak of violence in the West Bank, where clashes between settlers and Palestinians have soared since Hamas's terrorist attacks. Many Palestinians feel like they're being forced out of their homes, like in this village close to Hebron, where locals say attacks by settlers have only gotten worse in recent weeks.
We used to have problems with them, but after the war in Gaza, they want to kill all of us.
After the war began, the situation changed. They started attacking our houses and the people inside them.
The Israeli army has also become increasingly active in the West Bank since October 7th, drastically ramping up its raids, with Israeli forces detaining hundreds of Palestinians over alleged terrorist links. Clashes have broken out frequently, often with deadly consequences for the Palestinians. Dozens of people have been killed, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry, but with all eyes on Gaza, the record violence in the West Bank is at risk of being overlooked.
Aya, how much of a sense is there that the war in Gaza is spilling over into the West Bank?
As we heard in that report, there really is a sense that with all eyes on what's going on in Gaza because of the severity of the situation there, settlers in the West Bank may be taking advantage of that situation. So according to the UN, settler violence, which was already at a record high last year, has increased this year from an average of 3 incidents per day to 7 incidents per day. And so we're hearing reports of harassment, violence, and at times forced evictions, if you will, as Palestinians feel that it is no longer safe for them to stay in their homes. Both the both Germany and the United States have warned against this and have called on the Israeli government to protect Palestinians living in the West Bank.
Now, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken will be in Israel on Friday. What can we expect?
This will be his third visit to Israel and his second to the region since the war began and since the terror attacks on October 7th. We can expect that the messaging from the Secretary of State will remain the same from what it was since the beginning of the war, which is that the United States stands by Israel, stands by Israel's right to defend itself, but what we will perhaps be hearing more of is the United States calling on Israel to take civilian lives more into account. That is a demand that we've heard more and more increasingly from the Biden administration as this war enters into its third week and as everyday pictures of the constant airstrikes on Gaza are reaching the world. We can expect that there will be an emphasis on the importance of protecting civilian lives in Gaza. The Secretary of State will also be going to Jordan. After that, our viewers may remember that when U.S. President Biden was set to visit Jordan, some of the meetings were canceled because of the incident, the explosion at Al Ahli Hospital. So this is again another attempt by the administration to try and find a regional solution to this. Tomorrow, we also know that the head of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, will be speaking, and so this visit might also be looked at as a sense as deterrence, as the administration has emphasized time and time again that regional players should not take advantage of the current situation.
Yes. That was Aya Ibrahim in Jerusalem. Thanks for that. Hundreds more foreign passport holders have left Gaza through the Rafah crossing into Egypt. Crowds have gathered at the border, but only those on an official list are being allowed to pass. The biggest group of around 400 were U.S. citizens today. The crossing has been open for the first time since the start of the current conflict between Israel and Hamas.
Desperate to get out of Gaza, the Rafah border crossing is the only escape for these families. Many have been at this bus terminal for hours, waiting to have their documents approved and be allowed to board the next bus heading across the border into Egypt.
I have an American passport. My daughter has one too. My husband submitted his papers, but he still didn't get his passport. I'm pregnant. How am I supposed to get out without my husband? I appeal to anyone. I want to get out with my husband and my daughter.
And I don't know what's going to happen. And just about an hour ago, you heard it probably. A bomb came down, almost exploded everything. And I have a heart condition, the sky could, it's collapse on the side. So, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm just waiting to get to the other side.
Several hundred dual nationality Palestinians, foreign nationals and critically injured Gazans have crossed the border. Egyptian officials say they will assist around 7,000 people to leave, but the process may take weeks.
We do not have any information regarding the opening of the crossing in the coming days. Our operations are being managed on a day-to-day basis. We sincerely hope that our Egyptian brothers will keep the crossing open on a continuous basis, especially for those who are severely wounded. We have approximately 20,000 injured individuals, with thousands of them in critical condition.
Ambulances waiting at the crossing rushed severely injured Palestinians to Egyptian hospitals. With more than a third of hospitals in Gaza not operating at all, many more people need urgent care. But Egypt remains firm that its medical evacuations will be temporary, with no mass exodus from Gaza.
And we can speak now to Hiba Tibi. She's the country director for the NGO CARE in the Palestinian territories and joins us from Ramallah in the West Bank. Hiba, good to see you. Now, some aid has been delivered through to the Gaza Strip through the Rafah crossing we saw there. Do you know at all how many Gazans can benefit from it?
Thank you so much for this question. I think that over the last days, we have heard the estimations by the UN on the necessity of constant and bigger numbers, much bigger numbers, hundreds of trucks on daily basis to be able to secure the requirements for the mass population that is affected. But unfortunately, the number of trucks that entered is very limited. It of course serves, it is very welcome to serve the people, but the number stays at a very, very low and minimal number. In the same time, fuel is still not on the list for, which is very important, at least to cover the needs in the hospitals and water.
Yeah. Your organization has published a report on how specifically women and children are affected by the war. What did you find?
So everyone is affected by the war, but then there are layers of vulnerabilities that are added for women who are pregnant, women who are heading the households, women with disabilities, with hearing disabilities, with physical disabilities, and definitely the children, and of course the newborns. So the different ages they have and the different groups of women and children, they are affected more severely in terms of nutrition, being more vulnerable to catch up diseases, the spreading ones, more vulnerable to the overcrowded shelters, related potential gender-based violence and protection issues. Access to services become more difficult for women who are heading their households during the crisis and war. Unfortunately, women, for instance, would be, as you know, the last to eat when it comes, or the last to benefit from humanitarian necessities that reach the family in very small quantities. Today, when I was on the phone with my colleague, her granddaughter was crying for food. I'm hungry, I'm hungry. And she told me, I didn't drink water for 3 days just to save the water for the babies that we have here. We have 1.5 month baby and 4 months baby, and we just try to save the water for them. This is the situation, unfortunately, where they are severely affected. Unattended kids, it's a huge full story also, where families are not able to report their missing kids, and unattended kids are not connected to their family. So the situation is really harsh, and it becomes even harsher for women and kids of different groups.
Yeah. You mentioned your colleagues in Gaza. They are working under unimaginable conditions. What is it that you can do for them from where you are?
So all what we are trying our best to be connected to our colleagues on daily basis. With the blackout of the communication, that was a terrifying moment for us. What we try to do is to secure as much as we can what we call hygiene kits, survival kits, dignity kits, water, food. These are the colleagues who used to jump to help others. Now, because they are internally displaced and evacuated to the south, we find them among those who need support. As I mentioned, they are unable to access bread. Some of them, they did not eat bread since 4 days now. And we try our best, but the commodities are gone missing from Gaza. So we are trying to find, for instance, water, bottled water, drinking water for them, and it's not possible. They barely could get 2 gallons of water, one of them, after long attempts that lasted for 2 days.
It was Hiba Tibi from CARE. Thank you so much, and all the best to you and your team.